Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Meehan. I'm the Director of Communications at the Northeast Clean Energy Center. I'm speaking today with Laura Bartsch. She's the Executive Vice President for Sales and Marketing at Advanced Energy United, and she's taking part in our Diversity in the Climate Economy series. She's also one of our board members. So we're lucky to have her wisdom guiding us. And so great to see you here today, Laura.
Great to see you too, Michael, and everyone. Nice to hear you.
Excellent. So as I mentioned, Laura is in charge of sales and marketing at Advanced Energy United. And so where we're going to dive in is, I'm curious as to, you've been marketing clean energy since the mid-2000s. How much different was it when we first got started at who we were marketing to and how we were marketing clean energy from where we are today? And I think that'd be instructive for people to get a history lesson on just where we're coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. You know, the early days, which the early days for me were sort of mid 2006-ish, the industry itself was somewhat nascent. That's not to say that folks weren't doing it sooner, but the industry sort of coming together, especially in New England, was nascent. And so much of what we were looking at was, how do we market an industry? How do we embrace this new sector and help to raise awareness that it even exists, that it's even going on in New England? I was fortunate in that I developed a partnership with a woman named Helen Fairman, Millville Partners. And early on, we got involved with the then New England Clean Energy Council, now Northeast Clean Energy Council, but with the council and with some other groups and entities that were starting to really make a mark in terms of the innovation, the investment culture, et cetera. But we needed to even help people understand that clean energy was a thing, right? That it was an industry. So we developed a series of programs. We developed a fellowship. We really were trying to market the concept of an industry. And through program development and through sort of awareness raising, I think when I look back, when I look up now, where we are is that there is just broader awareness of climate in general as an issue, so that you come into the conversation from a different place. When you say to somebody that you work in clean energy, they have at least a sense of what that could mean. Even when I say that I work in policy or work for an organization that's transforming policy for clean energy, there is just a deeper knowledge base across multiple industries, because folks have read about it. They've read about legislation passing in the mainstream media. So I'd say the big shift is, we used to be talking only to people who kind of already knew what we were trying to say. Now we're talking to a much broader audience.
And I'm curious as to who was in that room back in the early days. What was the gender, race, age composition of that room?
Yeah, so I mean, really, it was mostly middle-aged white men. And then you would see the occasional sort of younger person, some of the startups and things, but it was a pretty non-diverse crowd. And I think many of there weren't that many women. One of the things that we used to joke when we would show up at these conferences, and it was me and Helen and maybe a handful of other women in the room, there just wasn't a line in the restroom because there was nobody to wait in line. That shifted over time. And certainly when you look at groups like NEWE, New England Women in Energy and the Environment, which is a thriving organization now, but even in the early days of NEWE, those meetings would be kind of 30 people, 40 people. And now there are hundreds and thousands of people involved in that organization. But yeah, it wasn't a particularly diverse crowd, and there was room to be more inclusive. And I think over time we are learning that there is still room for us to be more inclusive as an industry.
What was it like trying to get yourself heard in that room? Was there any challenges you had to, sort of faced, or just sort of barriers that were sort of in place that you had to work your way around?
I mean, I think the barrier was partially one of intimidation. I didn't come from a specifically energy-based background. So there was some of that, but I think mostly it was just being persistent. You know, as a woman who entered my career in the early 90s, and I entered in as an architect, which was also a very male-dominated field, I had learned how to be persistent, to be heard, and to find ways. But you know, there were always going to be the folks who were going to mansplain something to you, or assume that you didn't know something, assume that you didn't understand something. And, you know, unfortunately, there is a little bit of that adage of you just had to be better, you had to work harder, and you had to kind of put in a little bit more effort. That said, there were some folks who were incredibly supportive right from the start, and who gave, you know, Nick Darbeloff, who was one of the co-founders and first president of the council, was a huge support and a huge, you know, working with Nick and Trish Fields and Helen, you know, we all were kind of this crew. And so I think part of the way that I overcame some of the barriers was that I felt like I had folks around me who were willing, who were helping to open those doors. But, you know, there were days that were more fun than others, let's say that. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned because persistence is marketing to a certain extent, right? Like it's you just got to keep going. And you mentioned that you came to this from architecture. So you came through the Rhode Island School of Design, which is again not necessarily where people think you might get plugged into clean energy. I'm curious as to how that led you to where you are now.
Yeah, so yeah, non-traditional background for sure. I will say my undergraduate degree is in architecture, so I was certainly dealing with building systems and buildings, and really more from the energy consumption side. Certainly not how I would have framed it at the time. Makes more sense sort of in hindsight, but I think it helped in that as I came into the energy sector, I had made the decision to move away from the architecture world and went through a transition that led to strategic marketing. But I certainly had some of the vocabulary. So I understood building systems, I understood energy consumption. So even though I wasn't an energy wonk per se, I certainly had an awareness of, and I grew up in a family that really valued sustainability and valued environmental issues. And so this concept of being a steward of the earth really resonated with me. And then finally, you know, RISD is it's a problem-solving organization. The whole program is driven toward, within a certain set of constraints, how do you find a pathway to a solution? At RISD, that's an artistic or a design-oriented solution, but you can apply that same thinking very much into the energy sector, and certainly into, you know, how we discuss or address a problem and make it accessible to other people. So I think my background serves me well, even though it's not, you don't see a whole lot of RISD folks out there becoming, you know, energy policy and marketing wonks, but.
There you go. I'm curious now to fast forward to today. You're at Advanced Energy United. You just changed the name from Advanced Energy Economy at the start of the year. And I'm curious as to why the name change? Why is it, what's the importance of the United part of that? Other than it makes it for a great soccer shirt.
And I certainly am hoping to put those soccer shirts together because I get to make swag as part of our marketing. But really it reflects, I think, that we are working to make the energy space that we're in more inclusive, and to be united in our mission toward 100% clean energy. And we wanted to reflect the fact that our organization represents all different technologies at different scales. So everything from utility scale to distributed energy resources, but also to recognize that, you know, I talk about, you know, what are the jobs available in our industry? Well, it's all the jobs. We have to be united in our pursuit of this goal, because at the end of the day, we are trying to transition to a 100% clean energy system. And that system should and needs to involve folks from a variety of different backgrounds, across cultures, across neighborhoods, industries. It should be inclusive. It needs to be inclusive. If we are successful, we will have a more robust, more inclusive, clean energy economy. And so we really felt like our name needed to reflect that sense of unity, that sense of coming together. And it also just, it rings more like a solution, right? We are united in our belief, right? It just has that positive rallying sense. And we just felt like right now we need everyone to come together to look for these solutions.
Exactly. Yeah, we talk about, here at NECEC, how you're not going to have it, your street's not going to be decarbonized if nobody from your street is working in the industry. It's just practically speaking, that everybody, that united part of it is really essential. I'm curious as to how well you think the everybody part of it is going from the marketing standpoint. Like how far along the path are we to, really bringing in that wide, swath of people we need to get it done?
I honestly wish we were further. I think we have a lot of work to do. I think that we have got to become, we at United are working more. We've developed another part of our entity called Counterspark, where we're really trying to speak to the individual consumer, which is not something that we had done in the past. But more specifically at United, we are working to partner with groups like the American Association of Blacks in Energy, and we are becoming far more intentional in how we consider stakeholder engagement. I think there have been historically these sort of splits where you've got the ratepayer advocates or the community organizers or this group or that group. And again, speaking of being united, we need to unite with some of these other groups and really ensure that we are expanding the conversation to the communities that have been most directly impacted or disproportionately impacted by some of the existing systems and infrastructure. So I think we are really forcing ourselves to become more intentional in showing up, listening, listening to other solutions, listening to the perspective of folks who will be impacted by some of the systems that we're putting in place. But I think we have a long way to go. I think, unfortunately, we've been really good as an industry historically at sort of talking to the folks who already know, and we need to get better at talking to the broader spectrum. I say that we have had some big changes, though, that where mainstream media is bringing this topic to the fore a little bit more, where we are having, that's not marketing necessarily, that's messaging, but the reality is marketing is more effective when it's coming to a receptive audience that at least has some idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to ignore the climate stuff when your skies are turning orange. It's the hottest day on the planet 3 days in a row.
Yeah, I could show you the flooding on my very specific street on July 4th to demonstrate that this is a conversation we need to be having. And we need, yes, everyone on my street to have the job in this sector.
There you go. Well, thank you so much, Laura Bartsch. Once again, this has been the Diversity in the Climate Economy series here at NECEC. Thank you, Laura, for taking part. We'll be seeing you again soon, not only at board meetings, but we'll have you back online here because Advanced Energy United is doing a lot of cool stuff.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Michael. Really appreciate it.
Okay. And once again, everybody, we have an entire series of videos here. So make sure you watch this installment with Laura and so many more that we're going to be posting and have posted. So thank you so much and have a great day.